Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Jennifer Cunningham. I am a spiritual life coach and a shamanic witch. If you do feel called or pulled to, please like, share, and subscribe, as it does help with the algorithm. And it gets these messages out, or the stories that I have to share that are true stories and very authentic, if nothing else. So we are on, I believe, the 6th segment of my life story. And I think I left off with how I was going through that period of time where I was, running my own business, and I had stepped away from machining for a while. Well, it was an experience, but even with all the phone lines and everything else, because they don't exactly pay livable wages, to say the least, at least not when you're starting out. I don't know. I'm not going to speak for the phone lines or anybody else because I was starting out, and so I don't know how it would have been if I would have stayed with it, but I could not keep going. So I was at a class with my Reiki teacher, my second one, who I love and adore and is still a part of my life to this day. I was at her class, and we were doing the second attunement, and we were going over any visions that we had seen, and I previously had sent a message out to the universe that I needed help. In fact, I was going through like different deities or gods or goddesses that were, a part of like abundance, financial abundance, because I wasn't bringing in what I needed to keep things going. And so I put the call out there. And then I went to the class, and while I was sitting in the class, I kept seeing pink elephants everywhere, like dancing around the class. And so my teacher was asking us if we had seen any visions or experiences, like with feeling or colors or anything like that. And I looked up at her and I was like, what about pink elephants? And she's like, I don't know what pink elephants would mean, but it sounds like it's a message for you. And so maybe this is something that you need to reflect on and do a little bit of research on to find out what Spirit's trying to tell you. So I was like, okay, I'm always looking for that easy canoe ride, right? No such thing. Anyways, so I got home and I did some research on pink elephants, spiritual pink elephants, and Lord Ganesh showed up. And for anyone who is Indian, I truly honor you. And I honor the Pantheon, because Lord Ganesh saved my butt. So I did the proper mantras. I wanted to honor him in the most authentic, perfect way that I could. And so I did a lot of research, and I found the mantras, and I did all the research on Lord Ganesh. And so I did the rituals, as it would be done. And I tell you, it wasn't but a week later, and I started having a flow of clients coming in where I was starting to pick up pace, but at the same time, I had gotten a new job that paid more money in the machining field. And so I took that up and took the clients, because when you're struggling for a little bit, you're like, okay, I'll just, whatever you bring, whatever opportunity, I'm going to take it on. So I did that, and it really helped me, and the clients kept kind of flowing in. I started looking at other opportunities that were coming my way for shows and parties and things of that nature. And some of the parties that I went through were so powerful. To do a party where most of the clients are cancer patients, and you're able to reach them on that very deep level, spiritually, to give peace, to give hope, to share love. I can't think of a better thing. And that was one of the most powerful parties that I have done that I am so very grateful to have been there for. And there was others, of course, you know, it was family reunion and stuff, which I always love to do. But that one I'd have to say was the more powerful one to be there. And it wasn't just adults, it was kids too. So, you know, yeah, I couldn't have asked for a better experience than to be there for all that I could be, and to have those messages coming through from Spirit and to share that love. But yeah, the abundance started really coming through. The clients really started coming through, and I love Lord Ganesh. I have fun with Shiva, as I did talk about in a previous video about how he came to me on the flying carpet and, you know, kind of shared that, you know, the Seahawks were going to win the Super Bowl, which they did. So that was fun because everybody looks at him as like this very deep, heavy entity that brings in the storms and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, they're part of us. They're part of the collective. And they have a lot to share, and it's not all just one way. There's so many colors to all of us, right? There's the shadow aspect, and then there's the light aspect, you know, and within that light aspect, there's a lot of colors to share. And so I had a lot of fun. And then it was time for me to move on. And let me tell you something about the Morrigan. She, out of all of them, out of every deity that I've ever experienced, by far is the most intense. She's beautiful. She's no mess around. She is straight to the point. Are you willing to pull up your bootstraps and go forward or not? Because I'm not here to play. I'm here to move you forward. And so I didn't know about her in the beginning. I haven't, like, these are my ancestors, like, genuinely, they're my ancestors. Of course, all of them are all of our ancestors, as we're all one collective. But we have ones that I feel through experience play in our lifetime now according to our family path, for lack of better words. And this is something that I go back and forth on because, like, literally, we're all one. But at the same time, I can't deny through my own life path and experience that the ancestors that we're connected to through our family, at least in my situation, have worked with me the most and are here with me every day. So, like I said, when I first started, I started out with the land spirits, and I started out, you know, learning about the basics of walking with spirit and working with my spirit guides and land spirits before I ever did with what most would consider deities, you know, which I just consider them as ancestors, because even Earth is our ancestor. I would consider even the universe our ancestor, and we all have our own perceptions and beliefs, but, you know, from my experiences, that makes the most sense to me. So at this time, I was working a weekend job as a machinist and then doing my business during the week, which worked out perfectly for me with my two older children having been, you know, pretty much raised. My youngest was at her last year of high school, and my son had already graduated, and it's been a couple years since then, and he was just figuring out life. So literally I had the time. So during the week I would work out. I go for walks while I'm talking to clients, and then on the weekends I would work my machining job. And during my walks, I would see these crows, you know, and normally, like, crows are everywhere, right? Like, it wouldn't be such a big deal. I wouldn't pay as much attention to it, except for this was odd behavior. Like, these crows would follow me along the path, and then we had like, there was this like chain link fence that would follow the path through most of the area, and where there wasn't chain link, there was like wood fencing and stuff that would go along this running path or walking path that was like 1.5 miles, and I would do 15 miles in a day, and then I go to the gym. And while I'm doing my walking and running intervals, you know, in those spaces that I would take in clients. And it actually helped me a lot because I work better when my body's moving than when I'm sitting still. So even when I'm like at home and I'm talking to clients on the phone, I'm pacing around the house because it works better for me to be moving at all times. And even you'll see me in these videos where I'm rocking or I'm moving, because at the same time I'm telling my stories, I'm connecting to spirit a lot of the times to make sure that I'm on cue. You know, of course I still squirrel and veer off, but for the most part, you know, I try to stay on that cue. But every once in a while they'll bring up a vision like, don't forget about this happened at this time, or that happened at this time. And so I'm continuously in that movement, in that flow. Anyways, getting back to the story. So the crows would follow me, and they would sit on the fence line, and their heads would watch me as I'm approaching them and follow me. And I look back and their heads are turned towards me always. And I'm like, well, this is unusual behavior. Like, what are all these crows doing? And we're not talking about like a couple crows here and there. I'm talking about a fleet of freaking crows following me all along the way. And so after days of this, well, first I went to another class with my Reiki teacher, and she was doing body work on me, and she said, do you know the Morrigan's with you? And I'm like, well, who's the Morrigan? She's like, research her. She's an Irish goddess, you know, and she's here to help you. And I'm like, okay. I didn't know much about her. I hadn't really done research on her even after that right away, because I was like balancing everything out and really busy at that time. But then after like 2 weeks of these crows following me everywhere, and it wasn't just at the park, like I would walk out of my house and there would be like a whole family of crows in my front yard or on the side yard, and they would just sit up there and look at me as I'm, you know, getting ready for the trail again, and they would just be watching me. And so I went to a metaphysical shop. I was picking up some supplies, and the lady at the cashier said, I just need to tell you, I don't know if you know this, but the Morrigan is with you. And I was like, okay, now I'm really going to pay attention. And so I told her about the crows, and she's like, yeah, the crows that's a part of her. You know, it's the messenger. Really look into her. And so when I got home after going and getting my supplies, I researched her. And even with all the intense things that were said about her, and yeah, her energy's intense and she is no mess around, but there was this element of love where I just was not afraid. I wasn't nervous at all. And so I set up an altar for her. And I said, whatever it is that you're here for, I'm going to say yes, because whatever it is, it's important. I'm a person of service, and whatever is being brought to me, I don't hesitate. Like some people might, you know, reject, you know, but for me, it's like a whole nother adventure. I'm like, okay, I'm good for this, whatever. I did not know what I was signing up to. Let's just say that. I would not change it for the world, but boy, was it intense, and it was scary. At that time, there was a friend of mine who I was pretty close to while I was going through all this stuff with my ex. And he had always been there to talk to me. And his brother had passed. And so his brother was helping me from the other side while he was there in the physical. And it was literally the catalyst to help with the situation that I needed to face and go through. And it was time for me to move on. The chapter that I was in was over, and I could feel it in my whole being. And I can literally tell you that at that time, I felt like I was under some spell because it was so strong and so built up in me that I couldn't ignore it. I mean, every day, it was like over-consuming almost. And what she was asking me to do is to leave everything behind. And the message was that my life partner and his 2 children were ready. They were ready for me to come. I had a lot of healers and seers that told me at the time that I would be that fresh, cool water that those children needed because of all the chaos, drama, and turmoil that they were in. At the time, I had no idea, but I had faith in spirit. And I was ready for it, as scary as it was. And I was excited at the same time because I know with the hardest challenges comes the greatest gifts. And so it took a year to break away from everything that I have ever built. With my ex, it was literally 23, 24 years together. A home, a family, a job, a state that I literally grew up in, born, raised. And the Morrigan was asking me to leave it all behind. That everything would be okay, but it was time for me to move on. And that's really scary. When you've only known that and you've never known anything else, it's terrifying. And it took me a year. And this was like in 2017 when all of those powerful planets were coming to play. Not downplaying what's going on right now with our planets, but that was a huge start of the massive energies that were coming through. And yeah, it took a year. It took from literally about January, February, somewhere in there, all the way until the end of August for me to finally be able to let go. But my ex-husband helped me to do that as well. And we're still on decent terms, for the kids. I mean, we grew up together. There's a lot of history there, and I wish him well. He's a great guy. But when it's time to go, it's time to go. When a chapter closes, chapter closes. And so I am grateful for having done what, for having had the courage and strength to move on. I'm grateful for that because I have gotten a lot of beautiful gifts for that. But at the same time, I can't think of a more difficult journey that I had to walk through at that time. And I had to have the strength and courage to be okay with standing on my own. And so when I figured out it wasn't going to be exactly like I thought it was going to be, that's not how it was going to end. I was angry. I can't even tell you how many times I get angry with spirit because they don't fill in the blanks. You've got to experience it for yourself. And so it didn't happen out the way that I thought it would, but it happened out better than I thought it would in the long run. But man, has it been a battle for the last 6 years since. But I finally did have the courage to stand on my own. I moved out. I moved in with my sister, and then I met the one that I was supposed to be with, and it was exactly how it was prophesized. It was prophesized that we would be together before October, and that we would be spending the holidays together, and that we would be a family unit before the first of the year. And it all happened, boom, 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 exactly how it was prophesied by the Morrigan through every seer and healer that I worked with, who she brought the messages to give me the encouragement of, hey, this needs to happen for you and for them. This needs to happen. And so, like I said, by the end of August, I met my life partner, and it was literally after breaking up with my ex-husband, and my cousin had said, hey, why don't you just go on like lying on Plenty of Fish or something like that, just to date guys, just to get your mind off of everything and give yourself a reason to dress up and date and have fun while you're doing all your other stuff. It'll keep your mind off things. And so I did. I was not in the best of moods about it, but I thought, well, maybe she's got a point. And so I made an account and everything like that. And I had all kinds of, different guys coming through at that time. And I'm not gloating by any sense of the word. It's just Plenty of Fish means plenty of fish. I'll just say that. And this guy kept popping up. And the funny thing about this is that I had my parameters set for in my general area, which was up in Washington. He had his parameters set for his area, general area, down here in Portland. But we kept popping up on each other's, I don't know what you would call it, people that are interested in you. It kept popping up on each other's all the time. And I was thinking, Portland, why would I want to date some guy in Portland? And he was thinking the same thing about some girl in Washington. But then he broke down and it was like, well, okay, I'll go ahead and give it a try. I'll at least message her. What would it hurt at this point? She keeps popping up. And this funny situation about it is it was his friend that did the same thing as my cousin did, because he really didn't have any interest in it either. So we were both kind of coerced into it. And then we started talking, and one of the things that I put up on my profile is that, I am a medium. And I do talk to spirit, because the one thing about my ex-husband that was a constant battle was that I am authentically who I am. And it was very uncomfortable for him. Like, I would consider him to pray to his car gods. And he just wasn't very spiritual at all. And I was very spiritual. And so I made sure that that was out in my profile. Not just what I did for work or anything else like that, but who I was. And when we got to talking, me and my husband now, his mom is an empath and sees auras and stuff like that. And him being in the military has had a lot of paranormal experiences at different locations that he's been in. So he didn't deny that. He was actually just as interested in that part of me as the fact that I was a woman machinist. And we were both born on the cusp in August. He's to the 23rd. On the 24th, he was named after Christopher Robin off of Winnie the Pooh, and my nickname is Pooh Bear. And so all these like little things that just kind of validated what the Morrigan had told me about this being my life partner, and that we would match up perfectly. I started seeing that right away. And so it led into us making that first date and meeting his children and all that stuff. And then I found out just how spiritual he was, and that he was a priest for the Nordic ancestors and had been following that path for 14 years. And so when I came down here, he took me to a park where he did a bloat. And while he was calling in the Nordic ancestors, I started seeing like them coming through, But I didn't know who they were because I've never even heard of the Norse ancestors before this time, just like I hadn't heard about Morrigan before she came to me. And so I'm describing them as they're coming through. And they're all leaving like gold coins at the tree that he was doing the blow at. And presents, like it felt like a wedding. It felt like a spiritual wedding before we had even gotten married. And they were just leaving us all kinds of gifts and everything. And I would describe it, and he'd be like, well, that's Freya, that's Tyr, that's Loki, that's, you know, Odin, and so. And then his wolf spirit guide came through that he named Ulfgard, which is a white Nordic wolf that I had seen come up beside him. And I was like, well, who's this? And he's like, oh, that's my animal guide that is always at my side for protection, which is still an active part of our family today. And he protects all of us. And like some days he'll come up next to me while I'm in the shop, and, you know, we communicate through feeling, and I'll be like, oh, is there something I need to know? And he's just there with me for, you know, whatever reason. And in times of turmoil and trouble, you know, I'll say, can you check on the children? Can you protect the children? Which is the main focus for me and my husband, or has been for the last 6 years and continues on. But so yeah, that was a very interesting and powerful, I would call it the spirit wedding, because that literally what it was to me. And so that was the start of me and my husband's path together. And I think I'll wait for the next video to talk about the shadow, deep dark night of the soul shadow work that I had to do, because I feel like that's going to be a long one, where I was working with Hel and Angrboda to get through my childhood trauma while I help my step babies break free with their own strength and courage, as well as giving my husband the strength and courage to stand up for himself and to set the necessary boundaries that needed to be set. But I think I'll leave it here for now. And I like to thank all of you who might be listening to my stories and getting something out of them. Again, please like, share, and subscribe if you feel called to, as there might be others out here that might need the strength and courage through my stories and walking with spirit as well. And it helps with the algorithm to get them out. And that's really the strongest purpose that I have in doing these, rather than, you know, just being asked by the ancestors to share these stories for the betterment of humanity and those who are waking up at this moment. And so for now, I'm going to say thank you and goodbye.